Hello, everyone. This is a thread that I've kind of been putting off, but I finally am jumping into it, started by my good friend Tommy over at Tommy's Musical Adventures. Now, if you don't know Tommy, I'm going to put his link below. I'm going to put the link to the video below, I should say. And just a great guy. I'm honored to call him a friend. I've been to his house before, stayed the night. We saw the Monkees together, well, Mike and Mickey, back in October of last year, and talk on the phone pretty regularly. I say once or twice a week. Just an all around good old guy. He loves great music. He's the one who really turned me on to Mike Nesmith. But I mean, he likes everything. He loves Big Star. He loves Zappa. He loves Wildlife by Paul McCartney and Wings, and he'll know what that means. Um, but I mean, he's just an all around good guy. So he's always coming up with good content. He's not somebody that just shows you what he has in his collection. He has a purpose to all of his videos. Not that those other videos aren't purposeful, but he's always got something, a theme going in his mind when he's showing something. He's not just showing a record to say, "Hey, look, I just got this new, Paul McCartney album." He doesn't do that. He's goes a little bit deeper. So I appreciate that about Tommy, and I'm happy to jump on this thread for him and what he wants us to do. And I'll be interested to hear y'all's thoughts. Is to show 5 albums, and he wants you to pick 5 albums from 5 artists that they're not critically known to be bad albums. Like, I'm not going to talk about you know Dylan by Bob Dylan. I'm not going to talk about Pool It by the Monkees. Um, not that there's anything wrong with liking those albums, but I'm not gonna, like, he doesn't want you talking about albums that are widely regarded as a bad album. It kind of takes away from the defense of the whole thing. He wants us to show 5 albums in artist catalogs that are generally regarded as a weaker album. Not a pinnacle of creativity. And so he just wants you to talk about why you think they should deserve another listen. So I'm going to do that. And I am going to start with the Beatles For Sale. Now, this is probably a cliche answer. So, and again, there are Beatles guys out there that, know a lot more about the Beatles than I do. But anyway, Beatles For Sale. This is the fourth UK Beatles album. Again, we all know about the cover. The Beatles retired. They had just finished working Hard Day's Night. The movie Help and the Help album were soon to happen in their future. They had already knocked out the Please Please Me album, the With the Beatles album, the Hard Day's Night soundtrack. They've been touring. They filmed the movie, and now the record company's saying, "Hey, we need an album by Christmas." So they put out it's a very covers heavy album for those of y'all that for whatever reason might not know the Beatles. You do have some Lennon McCartney solo track. I mean, originals on here like No Reply, I'm a Loser, Babies in Black, I'll Follow the Sun, and then the big hit 8 Days a Week, as well as a few others on the B side. But then you've got covers on here like Roll Over Beethoven, Honey Don't, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, things like that. So it's the Beatles, pulling in some songs that they might have known growing up, songs that they might have played in the cavern when they were just up and coming. And then it's some filler on here. I mean, like the cover Mr. Moonlight is considered by many to be one of the worst Beatles songs, even though it's a cover. It's got this kind of hokey organ, like funeral parlor organ. But in the Beatles canon, critics will put this album at rear middle to almost probably the end, right down there with some people might say Please Please Me, some people might say Let It Be, and Beatles For Sale. They all kind of hover around those bottom slots critically, not my opinion, critically. Because I know the Beatles people, they'll pin me against the wall and say, "How dare you? This is my favorite Beatles album." So, for me, this is in the probably my top 5 favorite Beatles albums, simply because it holds a nostalgic place to me. It's one that I remember specifically buying and listening to while I was on vacation in South Carolina at the beach at Edisto Beach. But some of my favorite Beatles songs on here, I love the song "I'll Follow the Sun." The Beatles are slowly starting to experiment a little bit more with studio tricks. "I'll Follow the Sun" is double tracked by Paul McCartney. Beautiful ballad. You have, kind of the fade in, uh, kind of, different technique of 8 days a week. So you have the Beatles moving into a direction that, they wouldn't look back. And if you look at every Beatles album, you'll see that the Beatles, um, there's some sort of progression happening. Even up till Let It Be and Abbey Road, there was a progression happening where, like, what can happen next. And with this album, you really see that with a song like 8 Days a Week, where it's building in, uh, with, the studio tricks of "I'll Follow the Sun," with the more introspective lyrics. It didn't all have to be about love. I mean, songs like "Babies in Black" and, "I'm a Loser," they're not talking about, just going on a date with a girl, or buying a new car, or, so it was songs like that that groups like the Beach Boys, and maybe even, groups like, that were up and coming, like the Hollies and the Who, they were kind of keeping an eye on, even though they might not have been groups that were already together. This is what they're looking at, and they're saying, okay, these guys are more than just a teeny bop band. So anyway, there you go. Beatles for Sale. That's the first album. Second, I'm going to talk about the most recent full-length album by the Avett Brothers, called "Closer Than Together." Now, this album got a lot of criticism because it was saying that the Avett Brothers, or critics were saying that the Avett Brothers were becoming a little too political. This was their album just before COVID. It came out in 2019, but you had a lot going on in the country. You had, you had the election coming up. You had school shootings that were happening more and more, and people were growing sick with everything that was happening. And so the Avets gave us some of their opinion, especially on songs like "We Americans," "Bang Bang." "Bang Bang" is one of those songs where it's just, they're talking about, you know they're just listen to the song. I mean, you'll know. And I don't want to get political into it. Um, there's a lot that I like on this album. There's some things that are a little bit too harsh. Like, again, the song "We Americans" has some harsher moments. Um, then you have kind of some humor on songs like "New Woman's World," where they're kind of thinking, well, everything that's happened in the country so far, men were in power, and the high powers, whether it's, presidents, or, senators, whatever it is. And they're kind of are tongue in cheek saying, well, we've screwed up the world enough. Let's let some women have a try. Maybe they can soften it up a little bit and make things a little bit nicer. So it's got some great stuff on here, though. I mean, I really like all the songs on the album. Um, One of my favorites is "Long Story Short," which I cover a lot if anybody watches my live streams. Just a great story song, just a constant flow of lyrics with no chorus. I love it. And beautiful songs like "Tell the Truth," just really, really good ballads. And again, you gotta take politics and music as they are. I mean, that's been the case since, words were being put to music. Woody Guthrie was doing it back in the 40s. You had the old blues guys talking about religion and politics, down in the Delta. I mean, even back in the Civil War days, you had, references to the generals and to Abraham Lincoln or to whoever. So that's always been here. It's not just, a 60s thing where, like, oh, the 60s happened, music, got too political. It did for some, but if you have the platform and you feel you need to say what you need to say, and you think it'll impact just a few people, then do it. I might not agree with it, but do it. As long as it's not harmful to others. Um, I'll stop there. But anyway, "Closer Than Together," the Avett Brothers. I've got to talk about Tom Petty. So this is his album Highway Companion that he did with Jeff Lynne. It was Tom Petty's last solo album, and Mike Campbell's also on this album, as is Ben Montench. And it's a really good album. It became one of my favorites in college. Uh, Probably the last album that Petty had any kind of radio song off of, um, like classic rock radio. Everything else it's been played on like indie or Sirius XM, but the songs "Saving Grace" and "Flirting with Time" both made the classic rock rounds in 2006. And a lot of people, they said, it's kind of got elements of Wildflowers. It's got elements of Full Moon Fever, because you have the more laid back, rootsy songs on here, like Down South or Jack. Damaged by Love could have been on a Wildflowers, you know, demo set or something like that. But is it Petty's best album? No. Although it's making its way up for me between his 3 solo albums, not counting Mudcrutch. This one might be my favorite, just because it's a mature Tom Petty. He's in his late 50s, and it's got Jeff Lynne on it, but it's not the Jeff Lynne of like the Wilburys. It's a more laid back Jeff Lynne, very rootsy. So I highly recommend Highway Companion, Tom Petty. Next, Van Morrison, Beautiful Vision. Now, when we talk about Van Morrison, we talk about Astral Weeks, we talk about St. Dominic's Preview, we talk about Moondance, Tupelo Honey, his band The Street Choir, even Vita and Fleece, albums like that. We don't really jump into his 80s stuff. I mean, we kind of were like, well, the critics were like, oh, Van, all of his music started sounding the same. He had religion in him. He was kind of dipping from the same well, whatever it is. But again, don't give up on Van after those first few albums. It's kind of like McCartney. Some people discredit McCartney after he left the Beatles, or some, discredit him after he left Wings. Don't discredit Van after Astral Weeks. I mean, good grief. Astral Weeks was only his second album after he left the group Them. So this is probably my favorite Van Morrison album as a whole. I love the song. You have songs like Dweller on the Threshold, which is very, very funky. Songs like Cleaning Windows, it's fantastic. And I'm pretty sure Mick Jagger sings on Cleaning Windows. I'm not 100% on that. Mark Knopfler is all over this album. I should say that. Pee Wee Ellis, who is on a lot of Van Morrison albums during this time. I might be wrong, but anyway, it's a ragtag group of musicians. I say that in the most tongue-in-cheek way possible. I mean, when you have Mark Knopfler and Pee Wee Ellis on an album, it's not going to be a bad album. Great songs on here: Van Lowe's Stairway, She Gives Me Religion, Dweller on the Threshold, Celtic Ray. Just really, really a solid album. And again, it's Van. He's very poetic, and he was very poetic during this time. I mean, like albums like Into the Music, No Guru, No Method. Even going into the 90s with like Hymns to the Silence, and he's constantly made solid records, with the exception of his last couple. But 80s Van, don't sneeze at him. This is a fantastic album. Highly recommend it. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. And lastly, I'm going to go with the second newest album on my list. This is Born and Raised by John Mayer. Now, I know people like, oh, John Mayer, he's the breathy pop guy who sings about, Body is a Wonderland and Daughters. And, oh, he did that Tom Petty cover, Free Fallin', whatever. He plays with the dead. He plays with the dead. That shows what kind of musician John Mayer is. John Mayer has the chops to play with Mickey Hart, with Bob Weir, with Bill Kreutzmann, um, Jeff Chimini, and O'Teal Burbridge and Dead and Company. He's played with B.B. King. He's played with Buddy Guy. He's played with Clapton. You know, he's played with a ton of contemporaries. You know, say what you will about John Mayer's personal life. Uh, this is a near masterpiece of an album. Everybody talks about John Mayer and talks about Continuum and maybe even Heartbreak Warfare or Room for Squares. But Born and Raised, if you like Neil Young, if you like Bob Dylan, if you like Crosby, Stills and Nash, if you like Joni Mitchell, check out Born and Raised. Please, 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 I'm telling you, this album will knock your socks off. John Mayer had gone through a bunch of turmoil in the media. He had said some things about some former girlfriends that he had. He kind of just gave up on show business, moved out to Montana, started life on a ranch, and started hanging around with his acoustic guitar. And he was listening to Neil Young, to Joni Mitchell, to Bob Dylan. And then he's like, I should make an album for me. You know, at the time he was like, you know, he was the pop guy, you know, Say What You Need to Say. Again, Daughters, Waiting on the World to Change, all those hits. But then he hit this album. And once he hit this album, he did not care what the critics thought. He made this album. He made a very great follow-up to it called Paradise Valley. Then he started kind of going into his own direction on the last two releases. Completely different style of music, but the two acoustic albums that he did, Born and Raised and Paradise Valley, absolutely stunning albums. This one even has contributions from David Crosby and Graham Nash on it, and it's produced by Don Was. So if that's what you need to know, that's what you need to know. So Born and Raised, Tommy, is number 5. I highly recommend everybody check out Tommy's channel, check out the link, go over there, subscribe, do all the things, make your own video. I'll be interested to see if any of you all follow up on this. So thank you for doing this, Tommy. You're a good man. I appreciate you. Y'all be good. Take care. Talk to y'all real soon.